Okay, and welcome back. We're back with Grabthar's hammer. It's a hammer. It does stuff. It's new. Players can use it. Maybe they might find it interesting. This is like the beginning layer of digging into what we would call creating an item and being able to really dig deep and customize it. So now that we have a bleed and a stun, maybe I want my bleed and stun to work slightly different than the regular bleed and stun to add more dynamics, as it's a designing feature of making things work in a game. And luckily, they have a few ways of doing this. And so now we're going to go ahead and create our own bleed and our own stun that's using the base code that they have set up with the modifiers or arguments that we can pass to these effects and things, which this is a good demonstration of, and we'll go ahead and move into that. So in order to find out this bleed, remember we had to go to the build, the base, the scripts, the globals, and then go all the way down to static data, and then we find our weapon abilities, and then lo and behold down to the weapons Lua file. You gotta breathe for a second. That's alright. Again, all the static data that you'll find for most everything will be inside of the static data folder. You'll learn to live in this and learn how all this works. But now that we have this file open, let's take a look at the stun ability. And what we want to do is we want to create a copy of this, right? And so the weapons this is the core file, right? So we don't want to make our edits here if we don't have to. So basically we need to create this weapons file and do what we did with the equipment stats, okay? And so we need to go back to our mod here, whatever you named yours. Mine says Project Phoenix. We have the scripts folder, the globals, the static to data, and I believe if you hover over the icon for the file name here, it'll also show the folder structure, and it's in a weapon underscore abilities directory. So now I need to right click here, add a new folder, weapon abilities, okay? And inside of here, I need to have a weapons Lua file. So I'm going to right click the weapon ability, choose new file, and then I'm going to Control S to save, and then type in weapons.lua. Alright, so now that we have the weapons Lua, this is now overwriting this file, and it doesn't see this code anymore. So like we did in the equipment stats, we need to require, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this because anytime we make a mod over a file, we're pretty much going to be doing this to get all the functions and all the code, and then we write all of our override code below it. So now that we have the equipment stats up and available in this folder, then all I have to do is say, okay, I'm going to grab this weapons section here, and I'm going to paste that here. Now we're going to go back to the weapons Lua file again. We're going to come down and find the bleed ability. And here we go. We're going to go ahead and right click, copy, come back over to our override mod, and paste. Okay. Now that we have these two things done, I'm going to go ahead and close the main file because now we have identical copies of those weapon abilities. If I left these as is and saved everything, it would load that file up, and then whatever changes I made here for this stun, if I made this to 2 seconds, it would override the main stun ability because it's using the same table key. So for Grabthar's hammer's stun, we need to make our own unique stun key. So that would be easier. Let's do Grabthar's stun. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and just call this Grabthar's bleed. Alright, now that we have these two things, technically, Grabthar's hammer does identically what the stun and the bleed does, because we didn't change any of these, what I said, mobile effect args and values. We'll go back to this before we start editing how these things work. I'm going to go back to the equipment stats. And you see where it says bleed and stun? You need Grabthars. And then here, Grabthars. Alright? And now, if I just saved everything, it's going to use these data tables now for those abilities. Now, let's break down the stun ability. So with the stun, what it's doing here, it says the target mobile effect is stun. And what that means is that it's targeting a library that's the key name for the effect that you want to play. And so we can dig into that when we create our own effects later, but right now we're just generating a new version of the same kind of abilities, but tweaking them per item type if you want to make different variable things for players to use, right? This is where we're showing you the power in which it's easy to adjust. So let's get back to it. I know there's a lot involved there. And so what we're going to do here is the target mobile effects args here is going to have a duration and a player duration. And so for the good old hammer, we're going to make it slightly better, or OP, but against general mobs, I think it should be brought up a little bit. Let's go for like a 3-second stun. And then the trade-off is a half a second stun versus players. So you're practically getting a much higher value at a cost, right? Some PVMers would probably like this. And so maybe the bleed ability, as you can see right here, if we want to go ahead and change how that works a little bit, it's going to use the target mobile effect, the bleed effect, and here are some arguments that you can pass to modify, how this works. So pulse frequency, from seconds, it's going to bleed and tick. My bad. It's going to bleed and tick every 2 seconds. So we're going to make this hit every 3 seconds for 4 pulses. And let's go ahead and change this number to be a little bit higher, 70 to 90. It does some damage calculations and things like that change it. And the bleed thing, once we dig into that part. So now we have a completely modified bleed and a completely modified stun. And so lastly, we can change things sort of like the tooltip, right? So it says stuns your opponent for 1.5 seconds. Reduce to 1 against players. So we can just change that to 3 to 0.5 seconds against players. And then it's got the icon flame mark. We'll show you how we can adjust that here in a second. And then we have the bleed. We just go ahead and change what that states right here. It says causes 40 to 60 damage. This would be 70 to 90, so we can just go ahead and change that. 70 to 90. For, let's see, if we're doing 4 ticks at 3 seconds, it'd be over 12 seconds. And then, let's see, I think that's all we're going to have to do to make those abilities. And for this one, let's be generous and make it cost 20 stamina instead of 25. And we'll boost this one up to 30, right? Balancing, who knows? But I feel that's probably a good choice. And so now I'm going to save all again on this. Let's go ahead and go into the game here. Server should still be running. If not, I'll have to load one real quick. 1 second. So much stuff involved here. Let's go to the standalone. Gonna load up our test map. That's where we do all of our testing. This is the standalone server. While we're loading this, it basically loads up a certain section of the map. You can load up upper planes, things like that. And there's an error in our Grabthar's hammer right here. Let's go ahead and take a look and debug and see why that's happening. Oh, yeah, see if something got kind of foobarred there for a second. So hopefully, yep, we have to reload here. It fried on the template loading, so it just stays open. You have to, so just save it all again here. This is the things of developing, right? We're almost done though. We're almost there, right? So we're going to go ahead and launch right back into the test map. Should get a clean load here. You should see by the accepting players right there. We have no errors. Everything's fine. Let's go ahead and log her back in here. Alright, so what I wanted to do was type in the custom command, and this gives you a list of some general icons that you can find quick. There's more icons you can use. There's another LOA texture list that it's a different story, but let's just go ahead and say, okay, so we have the Grabthars hammer stun, right? I want to use like, what do you think? This one right here? Yeah, so this one's called force space push 01 is the icon name. So if we go to the display name, icon, this is the stun, force, jeez, I forgot already. Let's take a look at the name again. Force push 01, okay. So force push 01. And then let's see if we can find another icon for the bleeding that we might want to use. I mean, that one kind of looks okay. It's probably we'll do this one, right? Whirlwind. All right. So we'll go ahead and go to the icon. Whirlwind. We've almost made it, folks. Let's save these global files and let's try them out here. Now that we have, as you can see, we have the bleed and the stun. Did I rename the... Let's go ahead and make sure we have different... Grabthars bleed. Okay, probably do better stuff, right? I mean, at this point, like this naming stuff and everything else, you should just use Copilot to help write the stuff to make it more descriptive and more, you know, enriching to read and look at, right? Text porn for some people who like reading stuff in games. But anyways, we have the hammer, we have the equipment stats, we've created that. That was the last video. And now we modified and made our very own primary and secondary abilities by copying what they have as a base stuff to work with, and we made modifications to tweak them out a little bit. And the holy grail moment here is now that we have all that done, we'll reload the globals again, and you should see the primary and secondary abilities change when it reloads, right? And there we go. We have our new icons. There's our stun, and then there's our bleed. Now I'm trying to figure out, did I not get the display name? Oh, see, yeah, see, this is where I messed up. You see, you gotta slow down sometimes, people. I changed the mobile effect and not the actual. So nothing would have actually happened, other than the fact that these mobile effects wouldn't have worked because there is no mobile effect called Grabthar's hammer, right? So again, make sure you do the display text and not the mobile effect name. Getting old, getting bold. All right. So now that we're done with this, I'm going to do the save one more time. Again, when you mess up, this is live debugging. These are things that happen. As you can see, I do this a lot. And lastly, let's go ahead and just hit enter, push the up arrow to retype the reload globals. Let it reload here. Alright, now that everything's reloaded, which should say, as we found on their icons, Grabthars bleed and Grabthars stun, right? And so now we have a unique weapon. We have created new abilities that doesn't match a normal mace, so now players have a choice of which mace they want to use. That's fantastic. And then we modified the way that these abilities work per item, right? So like now, if you added bleed to an axe, you could justify that the bleed does a juicy hit because you create the juicy hit weapon ability, right? And then you attach it to the axe, and now you have a really interesting, mechanic, right? And so this is how you create Grabthar's hammer, and this is how you modify it to make it more unique. And so the next thing that you'd want to do after that is move to the next layer. The first layer was creating the template. The second layer was creating the individual data tables to modify the way the weapon works. And we also created the newer weapon abilities to apply to just Grabthar's hammer. And then these Grabthar's hammer uses another thing where we found with those mobile effects. That's where we passed those arguments through. Let's take a look here and explain that. So every time that we use Grabthar's stun, it calls this mobile effect file. And we're going to do that in the next video, where we're going to create Grabthar's stun and create Grabthar's bleed to create further customization for that individual weapon, right? So now, as you can see, you can edit like so many layers to every individual aspect if you just know how to tie everything together. And that's what these videos are for, is to help start from the basics and dive right in, and hopefully you learn something from this. So the next video, like again, we're going to talk about how to create our very own mobile effect. And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy the bleed and copy that. We'll get the files put in our mod directories to add our own stuff. All right, and thank you for staying along this long. We're going to end the video here, and we'll move on to making Grabthar's hammer even better. I'll see you in the next video.